What's up, fight fans? Welcome to Sportskeeda MMA's daily news roundup for March 16th. A new beef is brewing during UFC Fight Week. Paddy, Pimblett, and Illia Topuria recently got into a heated altercation in a hotel. Pimblett is coming off a stunning UFC debut KO over Luigi Vendramini. Both men have bouts this Saturday on the UFC London main card. Pimblett is set to face Kazula Vargas right behind the co-main event, and the undefeated Topuria opens the main card against Jai Herbert. But depending on how their fights go, we may see them lined up after London to resolve their beef in the octagon. On Twitter, Topuria posted the altercation, and the caption read, "I warned you. This is what happens when you disrespect me and my country. You saw me and wanted to greet me because you shit your pants, and you should thank my team, because if it wasn't for them separating me, I would have taken your head off." The clip shows Pimblett firing a bottle of hand sanitizer at Topuria's head, and Topuria throwing a punch in retaliation. This prompted Topuria's group to hold him back and move him away from Pimblett, who can be heard saying that he wasn't afraid of him. To which Topuria replied, "This is not Twitter." Paddy the Baddy has since replied to the Twitter clip in question. Imagine trying to jump someone on their own with 5 of your boys, and you don't land a single shot and get a bottle of hand sanitizer bounced off your head? You little clown. Don't try to act big like you did something when you shit your pants, pretending your boys was holding you back. But it seems like the beef started a while ago, when Pimblett tweeted unsavory words about Georgians. The since-deleted tweet didn't quite go over well with the Georgian UFC fighters. Do you think Paddy the Baddy will call out Illia Topuria if he wins on Saturday? Kevin Holland and 2 other people recently subdued an active shooter at a sushi bar in Houston, Texas. The gunman opened fire, which prompted Holland and his MMA-trained friends to heroically act, and this isn't even the first time Holland has caught a criminal. In an interview with Mark Raymundi, Holland shared his experience. "I wouldn't tell the next person to do it unless they're seriously trained for that type of situation. Besides doing cage fighting, I trained self-defense first and foremost. That was the best way to defend myself at the moment. Plus, I like Batman." Then he went into detail. "I was facing one way and then we heard a loud bang. I thought it was champagne bottle popping. I go to look around and you see people running like they had the look of death on their faces. Just super worried. So I get a little low, check the corner. So I go around the other side and come up behind the guy." He then continued, "But I noticed the guy on top was mainly holding the guy's hand to try and get him to stop squeezing the trigger. So then we pry the gun out of that guy's hand. I go ahead and pull him into my lap, put the hooks in, hit him with a rear naked choke. Soon as he was asleep, I let go of the choke, slid out on top, got full mount, stretched the arm so he couldn't reach for anything." According to Holland, nobody was injured in the incident, and the shooter was promptly apprehended. Holland is coming off an impressive TKO over Cowboy Oliveira, and now secured a swift rear naked choke finish over a degenerate. Holland also has notable wins over Gerald Meerschaert, Joaquin Buckley, and the legendary Jacare Souza. Do you think Kevin Holland should team up with Dale Brown and do a Gotham urban survival training video? Uncle Dana recently sat down with Logan Paul on his podcast and discussed many things about the fight game, from Khabib versus Conor to Kimbo Slice. One of the hosts even asked Dana about transgender MMA athletes and if he would ever consider signing them to the UFC. White didn't answer the question, but he did leave fans with this. "Well, it happened in our sport. There was a fighter named Fallon Fox who was a male fighter who became a woman, and he was out there beating the shit out of women left and right, and then finally ran into the wrong woman, and she beat his Eventually, the conversation shifted to Logan Paul asking Dana if he would be open to signing him. "If I ever wanted to do a UFC fight, is that something you'd entertain?" Dana then asked, "Who would you want to fight? You have wrestling and boxing. You ever do jiu-jitsu?" Logan Paul replied with "of course" and proceeded to tell Dana to sign him now. All Uncle Dana had to say to that was, "I'm not saying no." Logan Paul is currently 0-1 in boxing, but the YouTuber gained notoriety in the combat sports world for his exhibition bout with Floyd Mayweather. White was then asked if Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor would ever happen, and he said this, "Probably not, no. I'm never completely closed off to anything because you never know. I said I don't hate the kid. Listen, he's a young kid out there trying to make some money. Can't fault anyone for that." He then continued, "What we do here is completely different than what him and his brother are doing. I'm looking for the absolute best in the world. These guys who have trained their whole life. There's a market for what these guys do, and there's money to be made in it." He then addressed Jake Paul. "His brother's huge. What's your brother, 6'1", 210? Conor McGregor weighs 145, 155 pounds. Which is a wonderful segue into our next headline. Jake Paul responded to Uncle Dana's comments on Twitter. Dana White is begging for Diaz and Conor to fight for a third time. They have fought at 170 pounds in both their fights. I will fight Conor at 175 pounds, no problem. Stop making excuses. Paul normally boxes at 190 pounds, but has been pining for an MMA matchup with McGregor for some time now, and has used social media to make many callouts. Paul is also using Twitter to play matchmaker, notably offering $30 million to both Kanye West and Pete Davidson to box each other and settle their beef once and for all. Do you think Dana White sees a massive opportunity in signing one of the Paul brothers? And last but not least, Sean O'Malley recently weighed in on all the Jake Paul UFC drama. In a recent episode of the Timbo Sugar Show, O'Malley had this to say about Jake Paul's recent callouts of McGregor and Jorge Masvidal. Could you imagine Jake sleeps either of them? Could you imagine? My goal is to be the biggest combat sports athlete of all time. If Jake did that to Conor, I would have some tough shoes to fill. I'd have to go knock out Francis or something. O'Malley is 15-1 in the UFC and is coming off an impressive TKO over Illia and Paiva, and has recently revealed that he hopes to return to the octagon at UFC 274 against Pedro Munoz. That about does it for Sportskeeda MMA's daily news roundup. Here are the funniest moments from today's MMA world. Don't forget to subscribe and follow Sportskeeda MMA on all our social media platforms. Thanks for tuning in.